Welcome back to your Mission Prep podcast. I'm your host, Caleb.
And my name is Bruce. We're so happy today to have a special guest. Like to give would everyone please welcome our return missionary Jordan. One, two, three. Hi,
Hi, Jordan.
Jordan.
Hello, guys.
Will
How
you
we
introduce
doing?
yourself and tell us where you served your mission?
Yeah. So my name is Jordan. I served my mission in Hong Kong, along with Caleb, actually. So we began at the same time, so served in the same district,
Mhm.
went out together, and then had some other opportunities to serve around each other. So good relationship there.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's good to have you back on the show. I know how good of a missionary you were and how much insights you have to share with everybody. But first, maybe a little bit of the culture of Hong Kong. Maybe a couple of stories about the food that you'd be willing to share with us.
Yes.
Oh,
Nothing gross
yes.
for our listening audience, but something that will make me laugh. Go.
Definitely, yeah. Food. There's so many stories that you could go with that. So the last couple months of my mission, here's a fun story. I had the chance to serve, it was called the second language zone. And so we had all sorts of languages in Hong Kong. The main language is Cantonese, but we got all the leftover languages. So you had English, you had Mandarin, Tagalog, and then everything else. And so we got to serve with some of those Filipino sisters, and they were just awesome. But some of the foods that they brought in and made us try were it was just wonderful. So one of them, you guys heard of balut? You guys ever heard of that? Basically, it's just like it's just this egg, and it's got like the fetus of a chicken. You can see the chicken, you peel it open, and it's just this dead baby chicken in there with juices. And so they gave me that, and it wasn't too bad, actually. It was actually pretty good. You put like some vinegar in it and you just kind of drink it. Kind of gross, but it was good. And the
Yeah.
same day, Caleb might have had this, but they also gave us durian. You guys heard of durian? Big spiky kind of
Fruit.
jackfruit. I think that's the
Yeah.
other word for it. Um, and that was way worse. That was horrible. I take the chicken egg every time. I'd much rather drink that. So those are just two examples of crazy foods that they had there, to a
Wow.
chicken, baby chicken still in the egg to just this disgusting, smelled like feet, huge, spiky fruit. So
Mhm.
yeah.
It's interesting. You are a lot braver
Yeah.
than I am. I remember about halfway through my mission, I tried Baloo. I couldn't keep it down.
Yeah.
Fortunately,
No.
there's a trash can right there. But I
Yeah.
mean, props to you, man.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we want to get straight into it. What you've been thinking now a couple of days, I think. What is one section of Preach My Gospel you think would be helpful for our listening audience to know?
Yeah. No, and I really love that question, honestly, because when you start a mission, you have so many questions. You ask people tons and tons of questions. And so Preach My Gospel, I think, is the best place to start, honestly. And with me, I think before we kind of highlight a principle, I think it's important to know why we have a Preach My Gospel. Where did it come from? And so just to give a very vague backstory of kind of how the missionary process has worked in our church, in 1830s when our church was established, and then shortly after they started sending out the first missionaries. And at that time, all they had in their hands, they had the Book of Mormon and whatever they heard the prophet Joseph Smith and the other leaders say, and that's what they took, and just whatever they thought, that's what they taught the people. And it was powerful. It was definitely powerful. And missionary work, that's how it was for almost a century after that, until about the early 1900s. You start getting mission presidents who see, some missionaries, they'll know a few principles, but maybe not the whole gospel or the certain points that we want these friends to know. And so they'll start kind of making their own little templates or pamphlets or books to give the missionaries to just make sure they touch on those certain principles. And so throughout the 1900s, they started doing this, and then eventually the church caught hold of this and saw, this is a pretty good idea. And so in the 50s, they kind of made that first little pamphlet, and that's called actually a systematic program for teaching the gospel. And it was just a couple principles that they had. So the missionaries could learn about it and they can teach it. And then after that, in 1961, the church released, it was called a uniform system for teaching investigators. And this was a little different because it still had the principles, but you were to memorize these lessons word for word, and you couldn't really deviate from them. And so this was good. This was honestly really good because it allowed the missionaries to teach doctrines that maybe they didn't know before. But as time went on, you get to with President Hinckley, and when he started seeing this, and he was like, these are good, but we want the missionaries to be able to teach by the Spirit. When someone asks a questions, we want them to be able to go directly to that point to be able to teach them to their needs. And so they made committees, some of which President Holland was a part of, President Ballard. They made committees to go and gather information, and we eventually got to 2004 when they established and made the Preach My Gospel, which was just recently updated, as you know, just a couple years ago. But so we have that. And to highlight the main reason of why we have it, it was to teach by the Spirit. Um, missionaries back then, it was very hard for them to really comprehend what they were teaching and gain that testimony. And so the new Preach My Gospel, it's made for us, the missionary. It's not made for necessarily the investigator. It is, as we have to teach them, but it's made for us to learn and to grow our testimonies so that we can teach by the Spirit.
I'm glad to
And
share that because I walked down memory lane and realized when my time period was as a missionary. I can tell you this, I didn't go out on horse and buggy, but I also didn't have preached my gospel. I will just
uh,
have to guess. So thank you for that background. Anything else you'd like to share about that topic of preach my gospel?
yeah, just to kind of, finish up with what principle I want to highlight with Preach My Gospel is, it was made for us. And I think it's important that every missionary knows that. And you find that out in chapter 1 of Preach My Gospel, which is fulfill your missionary purpose. We're given that purpose and we're given this book for us. And there's just some beautiful points in chapter 1 that kind of highlights, how this is made for the missionary to convert us and to help us become teachers of Jesus Christ. So, chapter 1, short answer.
Good one, good one. I really love that you bring up that history and the point of even having a preach my gospel at all because I just realized that as this started to kind of formulate, it took I mean what early 1900s to 2004 to kind of fully develop into preach my gospel. They were still baptizing. The church was still growing, and even from the early like 1830s, like they didn't have preached my gospel. That wasn't ever the point of missionary work. And so I love that you bring that up, that preach my gospel is just a tool for us as missionaries to kind of help us develop these skills and help us to understand these things that may have been learned through hard lessons by past missionaries.
You know what's really funny is maybe the year you guys were born, since you were born the same year, that someone's thinking, oh man, there's a generation that's here that's going to serve a mission. We better think of something more advanced that they could use on their missions.
Kind of get through to the new generation's brain, get through me and
No,
Caleb's
no,
head.
that's
No,
because you guys
probably
are so
couldn't guess.
advanced that,
Probably.
that they need
Yeah.
to invent something. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, another question, just kind of to kind of pick your brain a little bit. Is there maybe an experience that you can share that kind of highlights the principle that you chose here today?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll share a quick experience. And Caleb, I'm sure you've had a lot of the same feelings as I have, so you can pinpoint some stuff if you'd like. But when you first get to the mission, there's a lot of hard things that you go through. Just with learning how to be a missionary, but one, for those who go to serve in a foreign land, you got to learn the language. You got to learn how to speak it. And so It's a difficult process. And so when you get there, everything just kind of seems small. But over time, we're blessed with a lot of time. You got 2 years on the mission. You start to learn those principles of what are important. And very early on my mission, I began to learn that I was a representative of Jesus Christ. And so I was to teach about him. And um, Caleb, you might have known this family, but they had a son. His name was Nick, and the mom's name was Akit.
Mm.
And to just share a little bit about them, they were just going through a really, really hard time um, when I first met them. And I've never seen a person who, had kids, a mother cry so much.
Mm.
And, with the language, I just couldn't really understand what was going on. But me and my companion is we taught her just the most simple principles about Jesus Christ, everything focused on her, on him. It helped her change her view from us and our weakness to Jesus Christ. And over time, as we began to just teach her these very simple principles, she'd share with us how every aspect of her life would change, that she'd be happier. And her son would even tell us before that when we do something stupid, her kids would do something stupid, she'd get really upset with them and be throwing stuff, and then over time, she just was a lot more patient with them. And, how that relates to the first principle, we would never have been able to teach her um, about Jesus Christ if we didn't know him ourselves, if we didn't understand what we were called to do and knowing that purpose. And so, because we had preached my gospel, because we understood the purpose, we used it to convert ourselves first. So that way, with the limited language we had, she was able to feel the spirit. And it wasn't just something I had memorized, it was something I really felt. And so, just so powerful to see that it can change other people's lives.
I'd like to ask you a follow-up question, Jordan. I know that there are some that are thinking about a mission or getting ready to go on a mission who feels like they don't know everything and they
Mhm.
don't feel prepared because they don't know everything. They don't even know some of the doctrines or how to teach it effectively. What advice would you have for them?
Yeah. One thing I think is really cool about Jesus Christ is that from the very beginning of his ministry, his first miracle was that he changed water to wine. He showed the world that he can change things instantly. Um, and I think this is good and this is bad because one, we know that Jesus Christ can change stuff. He can make us go from dirty washing hand water to wine that the governor of the party is blown away by. Um, and sometimes we think that that's how God should work with us every time. Changing water to wine is a miracle, but so is something like the Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon is huge, it's beautiful, but it took time to develop. It wasn't instantly, you know. And so, the same way that Jesus Christ can take a little bit of water and turn it into wine instantly, a little bit of water over a lot of time could make something like the Grand Canyon. A little bit of water, a little cup of water, a little piece of bread over a long period of time can change you into something beautiful. And so, because of Jesus Christ, time can become the medium in which his atonement and his power can be manifest in our lives. And that's what we're blessed with on the mission. We have 2 years to dedicate that. And so just be patient. The Grand Canyon wasn't formed in a day, but it's still beautiful. And we're blessed with that time because of Jesus Christ.
That's beautiful. Very well said. Thank you. I know that it's important to not, that you don't have to know everything, but you need to know enough, meaning you need to have a testimony of God, the Eternal Father, His Son, Jesus Christ, the restoration of the gospel, the prophet Joseph Smith, the Book of Mormon, and the living prophets. Am I missing anything else, guys?
No, I think you nailed it right on the head with
Yeah,
everything just centered on Christ. Yeah.
Mhm.
wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. And to add on to that, both those points actually I love. Um, kind of had a similar experience to you entering the mission field. Um, except I had been around missionaries quite a bit throughout my life. I had the pleasure of interacting with different missionaries as we would invite them over for dinner and see them at church and whatnot. And so I would hear a lot of the stories about how it would work and get a lot of the tips and tricks. And I think those kind of built themselves up in my brain to where I had a very high expectation. Entering the mission field, I kind of was like, okay, so I'm wearing Jesus Christ's name on my chest. I should do this and this and this and this, and people should feel the spirit when I talk. And I've only ever heard stories of like people crying, like 1 week baptisms, and so all these things, and it was very, very overwhelming for me. But as trainer, my trainer and other like district leaders, zone leaders, like other missionaries, um, well, when they showed me and when they like told me, taught me, out of that Preach My Gospel chapter 1 was what you got to know, what you got to do is know Jesus Christ and help others know who he is. And all those other things are stuff that God takes care of. And I learned more and more, expanded upon that lesson that as missionaries, we're just the mouthpiece. Is Jesus Christ is God that's converting these people. It's the Spirit of God that's actually doing the converting and teaching in the lessons. And we're just there to learn and grow and spiritually and in life have these experiences and act as mouthpieces for God.
Wow, that was powerful. Thank you. Jordan, we really appreciate you taking time to be with us. We'd like to know if you could wrap it up for us with your testimony, both in your mission language and then in English, just a simplified version of it.
Wow. Yeah,
We
can
are
do.
international church, so we want to get a flavor.
Yeah. Okay, absolutely. Yeah. 首先我可以用普通话来分享我的见证。
可以啊，
OK，好的。那我知道，呃，天父他是我们在天上的父，他认识我们每一个人，他知道我们每一个人的优点，还有我们的缺点，他知道他怎么可以幫助我們變成更好的人，這是通過耶穌基督和他的福音。咁咧，我都知道咧，如果我哋每一日都會付出啲時間去更加認識耶穌基督佢嘅生活啦，佢嘅生命啊、我哋生活嘅每一個部分都會一步一步進步。我知道咧，我哋而家有個活着嘅先知，佢叫 Russell M. Nelson，同埋如果我哋跟隨佢咧，跟隨佢嘅教導咧，佢會幫我哋更加認識耶穌基督。And to finish in English, I just continue to bear my testimony that Jesus Christ is the center of this church. Um, I bear testimony that when we know who we are in relation to God, that most of our problems uh, will cease to be problems. When we know that we really are children of God, that we are disciples of Christ, that we understand our potential of who we can become, all those decisions and all those hard things will go away. And I know that the missionary work and the gathering of Israel is the most important work on the earth today because it's teaching people of who they are and who they can become. And so I say that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
man.
Thank you for taking the time to join us today, Jordan, and thank you for your thoughts. That was absolutely wonderful. And thank you to everybody for joining us today. Be sure to join us next week for another episode.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.